checked into a hotel. They gave me rules, 3 horror stories. The hotel looked normal from the outside. That's the part I keep thinking about. No flickering lights, no broken signs, just a quiet building on the side of the road, the kind you'd pass without remembering. It wasn't even that late when I arrived, just past midnight, the sky completely dark, the parking lot half empty. I wasn't planning to stay long, just one night. The lobby was clean, almost too clean. No music, no background noise, just the soft hum of the lights overhead. The receptionist didn't greet me right away. He just stood there behind the desk, watching me like he already knew why I was there. "I need a room," I said. He nodded slowly. No questions, no small talk. He reached under the counter and pulled out a key. Not a card, a key. And that was the first thing that felt off. He slid it across the desk, along with a folded piece of paper. "Room 214, he said. Then, after a pause, "Read the rules before you go upstairs." Not a suggestion, not a warning, just something I was expected to do. I picked up the paper, and for some reason, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I didn't read the paper right away. I took the key first, turning it over in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have, cold, solid, nothing like the plastic cards every hotel uses now. It didn't have a logo, just a number engraved into the metal. 214, simple, normal. I slipped it into my pocket, then unfolded the paper. The list was short, too short. 3 rules, that was it. I remember expecting something mundane, checkout times, quiet hours, maybe something about the pool. But this wasn't that. 1. Do not leave your room after 2 a.m. 2. If someone knocks, do not open the door unless you hear your name. 3. If you hear movement in the hallway, do not look outside. I stared at the paper for a few seconds, waiting for the rest. There wasn't any. No explanation, no context, just rules. I looked back up at the receptionist. He was watching me, not casually, not out of curiosity, like he was waiting to see how I'd react. I forced a small laugh. "This is a joke, right?" He didn't smile. "You'll understand later," he said. And for some reason, that made me fold the paper instead of asking more questions. The elevator was at the end of the lobby. Old, not broken, but not modern either. The kind with metal doors that slide shut slowly, like they take their time deciding whether to close at all. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the second floor. The doors shut with a soft, dragging sound. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the elevator moved. Not smoothly, not like it should. It jerked slightly, then continued upward at a slow, uneven pace. The light above flickered once, just once, before stabilizing again. I leaned back against the wall, pulling the folded paper from my pocket, reading the rules again without really thinking about it. 2 a.m. Don't open the door. Don't look outside. I frowned slightly. It all felt unnecessary, overly dramatic. Then the elevator stopped. The doors opened, but something felt off. The hallway outside was darker than it should have been. Too quiet. I stepped out slowly, glancing back at the elevator for a second. The panel inside still showed the number 2, but for some reason, I wasn't sure I had actually gone up only one floor. The hallway didn't feel like a hotel. That was the first thing I noticed. Hotels usually have a certain kind of noise: distant footsteps, doors opening and closing, muffled voices behind thin walls. This place had none of that. It was completely silent. The lights were on but dim, casting a dull yellow glow that didn't reach the corners. The carpet looked clean, but worn in a way that didn't match the rest of the building, like it had been used more than it should have been. I stepped out of the elevator slowly, the doors sliding shut behind me with a soft click that echoed longer than it should have. Too loud for a place this quiet. I glanced down the hallway. Room numbers lined both sides: 210, 211, 212. My room was halfway down. I started walking, my footsteps sounding heavier than normal, like the floor was amplifying every movement. Halfway there, I stopped. For no reason. Just stopped. Something felt off. Not in front of me. Behind me. I turned slightly. The elevator was gone. Not closed. Not there. Just a blank wall where it should have been. And in that moment, I realized something was very wrong with this floor. I didn't turn back. I told myself I had imagined it. The elevator. The silence. The feeling that something wasn't right. It all had to be stress. Lack of sleep. Nothing more. Room 214 was right where it should be. The number was slightly scratched into the metal plate like it had been replaced at some point. I hesitated for a second, then pulled the key from my pocket and unlocked the door. It opened easily. Too easily. The room looked normal. A bed, a small table, a lamp in the corner casting a warm, steady light. Everything clean. Everything exactly where it should be. Nothing strange. Nothing wrong. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, the click of the lock sounding louder than expected. For a moment, I just stood there, listening. Nothing. No hallway noise. No distant movement. Just silence. I exhaled slowly, feeling some of the tension leave my body. Of course, just a normal room. Then I noticed something. The paper, still in my hand. I unfolded it again, my eyes scanning the rules once more. And this time, they didn't feel like suggestions. They felt like instructions for surviving the night. At first, nothing happened. I sat on the edge of the bed, the folded paper in my hand, glancing at it every few seconds like it might change if I looked long enough. The room felt normal again. Quiet, still, predictable. Too predictable. I checked the time. 1:17 a.m. Still early. Plenty of time before 2 o'clock. I almost laughed at myself. Rules like that didn't make sense. Not really. People come and go from hotels all night. There's always noise, movement, life. But this place didn't feel like that. It felt paused. I stood up and walked toward the door, resting my hand lightly on the handle. Just to check. Just to prove to myself that nothing was different. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I leaned closer, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no sound at all. I stepped back slowly, my eyes drifting toward the clock again. 1:42 a.m. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like something was waiting. Not for a specific time, for me. And for the first time, the rule didn't feel strange. It felt necessary. like whatever was about to happen at 2 a.m. was already here, just not moving yet. The clock hit 2 exactly, not 1:59, not a second late. 2. And the moment it changed, everything shifted, not visibly, not in a way I could point to, but the room felt different. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was active. I stayed where I was, sitting on the edge of the bed, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting. Seconds passed. Then I heard it. A soft sound in the hallway. Not footsteps. Not quite. More like something brushing lightly against the carpet. Slow. Controlled. Moving past my door. I held my breath, listening as it continued, fading slightly as it moved further down the hall. Then it stopped, right outside my room. The silence that followed felt heavier than before, focused. Then a knock, soft, 3 times, evenly spaced. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at the door, my pulse rising as I remembered the rule. Don't open it unless you hear your name. Another knock, this time slower, more deliberate. And then a voice, quiet, calm, right on the other side of the door. Hey. A pause, then softer. I know you're in there. I froze the moment I heard it. The voice didn't sound wrong. That's what made it worse. It was calm, familiar, almost normal. The kind of voice you wouldn't question if you heard it during the day, but it was 2 a.m. and it was right outside my door. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the handle, waiting. Hey, the voice said again, a little softer this time, closer, like whoever or whatever was standing there had leaned in. You can open the door. My grip tightened on the edge of the bed. It hadn't said my name, and that was the rule. It hadn't said my name. A pause followed, long enough that I almost thought it had left. Then, a faint sound, not knocking, breathing, slow, controlled, right on the other side of the door. I know you're awake, it said, still calm, still patient, like it wasn't in a hurry, like it had time. And that's when I understood something that made my chest tighten. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was waiting for me to make a mistake. I kept my eyes on the door. Didn't move. Didn't answer. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint sound of breathing on the other side. Slow, controlled, waiting. I focused on the rule, don't open the door unless you hear your name. That was the line. That was the difference. If it didn't say my name, I was safe. That's what I told myself. A few more seconds passed, then the breathing stopped. Completely. The silence that followed felt wrong, not empty, prepared. And then it spoke again. This time, softer, closer, like its mouth was right against the door. Daniel. My chest tightened instantly. I hadn't told anyone my name, not the receptionist, not anyone in the building. I felt my hand twitch slightly, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. It said my name. That was the rule. And that was when I could open the door. But something didn't feel right. Not the voice, not the tone. Something deeper. Because the way it said my name wasn't like it knew me. It sounded like it had just learned it. My hand moved before I could stop it. Just slightly. Just enough to reach toward the door. It said my name. That was the rule. That was was the moment I was supposed to open it. My fingers hovered over the handle, my pulse racing as my mind tried to catch up with what my body was already doing. Something felt wrong. Not loud, not obvious, just wrong. The voice on the other side didn't sound impatient, didn't sound human anymore. It stayed calm, too calm. "Daniel," it said again, softer this time, closer, like it was right against the door. Waiting, I swallowed, my grip tightening slightly as I hesitated. Then I remembered something. The receptionist. The way he looked at me. "You'll understand later." My hand stopped right on the handle. I didn't open it. I couldn't. And the moment I made that decision, the voice changed, not in words, in tone. The calm disappeared. The breathing returned, heavier, closer. And then the door handle moved, slowly, from the outside. And I realized something that made my chest drop. It hadn't needed me to open the door. It was just waiting to see if I would. The handle stopped moving, mid-turn, like something on the other side had suddenly decided to let go. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at it, waiting for it to turn again. It didn't. The silence came back, but not the same silence as before. This one felt aware, like whatever had been outside the door hadn't left. It was still there, just not touching the handle anymore. Seconds passed. Then a slow step, soft, barely audible, moving away from the door. I followed it with my ears, my entire body frozen in place as the sound drifted down the hallway. One step, then another, then nothing. Gone, just like that. I stayed where I was for a long time, my hands still hovering near the handle, my pulse slowly settling back into something normal. It was over, or at least that part of it was. I stepped back from the door carefully, my eyes still fixed on it, like it might move again at any second. And that's when I realized something that made everything worse. It didn't sound disappointed. It sounded like it had learned something, and it was going to use it the next time. I didn't leave the room, not after that. I stayed inside, keeping the door locked, the chain in place, the paper on the table where I could see it. Every few minutes, my eyes drifted back to it, like I needed to remind myself the rules were real. Morning came eventually. Nothing happened. No noise, no knocking, no sign that anything had been there at all. And that almost made it worse, because it meant whatever happened only happened at night. I should have left, packed my things, walked straight out, never looked back. But I didn't. I told myself it was over, that I had followed the rules, that I had done everything right, and that meant I was safe. By the time night came again, the room felt different, not unfamiliar, not strange, just settled, like something had already decided where everything belonged. I sat on the bed watching the clock again, waiting, because this time I knew it would happen. Not maybe, not possibly. It would. And when the clock turned to 2 o'clock, I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear knocking. I heard something else from inside the room. At first, I thought I imagined it. A faint shift, so quiet it almost blended into the silence. But it wasn't coming from the hallway. It wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from inside the room. I sat still on the bed, my eyes scanning slowly. Table, chair, door, ceiling, trying to find something that didn't belong. Everything looked the same, exactly the same. Then I heard it again, closer this time, from the corner, near the chair. A soft movement, like fabric brushing lightly against itself. My chest tightened, because nothing was there. The chair was empty. The floor was clear. There was no place for anything to move. And yet, something had. I didn't stand up. I didn't go check. I just stared at that corner, my body locked in place as I waited for it to happen again. Seconds passed. Then, another shift. Slightly to the left. Closer. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just, moving. Carefully. Like whatever was there wasn't trying to hide. It was making sure I noticed. And in that moment, something became clear. It hadn't followed me into the room. It had already been inside before I closed the door. I kept staring at the same spot. The corner near the chair. Nothing was there. I knew that. I could see the entire space clearly. The wall, the edge of the carpet, the shadow cast by the lamp. Empty. Completely empty. But the feeling didn't match what I was seeing. It felt occupied, like something was standing there, just slightly out of reach of my vision. I didn't blink. I didn't move. Because I had this overwhelming sense that if I looked away, even for a second, it would change. And the air in the room felt heavier, not warmer, not colder, just denser. Like there was something taking up space that I couldn't see. Then it happened again. A slight shift. This time closer to the wall. Closer to the edge of the light. And for just a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something. Not a shape. Not a figure. Just a distortion. Like the shadow moved in a way it shouldn't have. My breath caught. Because I hadn't imagined the sound. And whatever was there wasn't trying to stay hidden anymore. It was trying to become visible. I told myself not to react. That was the only thing I could control. If I stayed still, if I didn't acknowledge it, maybe it would stop. Maybe it would go back to whatever it was doing before I noticed it. But it didn't. The next movement came slower, more deliberate. Not just a shift in the shadows. This time, it had direction. It moved along the wall, from the corner, toward me. My chest tightened as I followed it with my eyes, trying not to move my head, trying not to break whatever invisible line existed between us. There was still nothing there. Nothing I could clearly see. But the space changed as it moved. The light bent slightly. The shadows stretched in a way it shouldn't have, and it kept coming closer. Not fast, not aggressive. Careful, measured, like it was making sure I could follow every inch of it. I gripped the edge of the bed harder, my body locked in place as it reached the edge of the light. And then it stopped, right there, close enough that I could feel it, not touching, but present. And in that moment, I understood something that made everything worse. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was showing me exactly where it was. I didn't move. I didn't dare. The space between us felt too thin now, like any movement would break whatever invisible boundary was holding it back. Then I heard it. Not from the hallway, not from the walls, from right in front of me. Breathing. Slow. Steady. close enough that I could feel the air shift slightly with each inhale. My chest tightened instantly because I wasn't the one breathing like that. I tried to stay quiet, forcing my own breathing to become shallow, controlled, almost non-existent. But it didn't match. The rhythm in front of me stayed steady, calm, unaffected, like it didn't care whether I noticed it or not, like it expected me to. I kept my eyes locked on the empty space where the distortion had stopped, my entire body frozen as the sound continued. In, out, in, out. Then it changed. The next breath came slower, deeper, closer. And in that moment, something became clear in a way I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just standing near me anymore. It was leaning in, listening, matching me. And the worst part wasn't the sound. It was the realization that followed. It knew exactly how close it could get without touching me. I didn't want to move, but I couldn't stay there forever. The breathing didn't stop. It stayed steady, controlled, close enough that it felt like it was measuring me, matching me. I needed to look away, just for a second, just to break it. Slowly, carefully, I shifted my eyes, not my head, toward the side of the room, the mirror, mounted on the wall near the door. I hadn't looked at it since I walked in. Now I couldn't stop, because in the reflection, I wasn't alone. At first, it didn't make sense. The room looked normal. The bed, the lamp, me, sitting exactly where I was. And then I saw it, behind me, not clearly, not fully, just a shape, darker than the shadows, standing too close, too still. My chest tightened as I forced myself not to turn, because whatever was behind me wasn't in front of me. The breathing I heard wasn't coming from where I thought. And in that moment, everything shifted in a way I couldn't undo. It wasn't in the corner. It wasn't moving toward me. It had already moved. And it was standing right behind me. Every instinct in my body told me to turn, to look, to confirm what I had just seen. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because something deeper than instinct was telling me the same thing the rules had from the beginning. Don't react. Don't engage. Don't give it what it wants. I kept my eyes locked on the mirror, my breathing shallow, controlled, even though I could feel it now. Behind me. Close enough that the air shifted against the back of my neck. The reflection didn't move. The shape stayed there, still, watching, waiting. I didn't blink. I didn't move. Because I knew if I turned, it wouldn't be where I expected. Seconds passed, or minutes. I couldn't tell anymore. Then, the reflection changed, not quickly, not suddenly. The shape behind me leaned closer, just slightly, and I felt it. Not touch, but presence, immediate, certain, right at the edge of contact. And then it stopped again, not retreating, not advancing, just holding that distance. And in that moment, something became clear in a way I couldn't ignore. It didn't need me to see it. It needed me to acknowledge it. I focused on the mirror, not on what I felt behind me, because the reflection didn't match. At first, I thought it was just my mind trying to make sense of it. The angle, the light, the shadows. Something had to explain why what I saw didn't feel right. But the longer I looked, the clearer it became. The shape behind me wasn't aligned with my body. It stood too close, too centered, as if it wasn't actually positioned where I felt it. My chest tightened, because that meant one thing. Either what I felt was wrong, or what I saw was. Slowly, carefully, I shifted my eyes downward in the mirror, watching my own reflection. My shoulders, my head, the empty space behind me, and the shape, still there, still not matching. And then it moved, not in the room, in the mirror. A slight shift, forward, closer to me. But I didn't feel anything change behind me. No movement, no adjustment, nothing. And in that moment, the realization hit, cold and immediate. The mirror wasn't showing what was in the room. It was showing something else, something closer, something already where it shouldn't be. And I didn't know which one was real anymore, what I felt or what I saw. I couldn't trust the mirror. I couldn't trust the feeling behind me. One of them was lying, or both. I stayed completely still, my eyes locked on the reflection, my mind trying to make sense of something that didn't follow any logic. If the mirror was right, then whatever was behind me was already closer than I felt. If the feeling was right, then the mirror was showing something that hadn't happened yet. Either way, I was out of time. The shape in the mirror shifted again. Closer. Too close. Almost touching me. But I still felt nothing behind my back. No breath. No presence. Nothing. My heart started pounding harder, the pressure building in my chest as I realized what that meant. There was only one way to know. I had to turn, slowly, carefully. I started to move, just slightly, just enough to begin. And the moment I did, the reflection smiled, not a full expression, just a subtle change. But it was enough, because I hadn't moved my face. And in that moment, I understood something that made everything stop. It wasn't waiting for me to see it. It was waiting for me to turn around. I stopped moving. Instantly. My body locked in place the second I saw it, the reflection smiling without me. That wasn't possible. It shouldn't have been possible. And yet, it was right there in front of me, clear, undeniable. I forced myself not to turn, not yet, because something in me understood what that meant. If I turned now, I wouldn't be reacting to what was behind me. I'd be reacting to what the mirror wanted me to see. My breathing became shallow again as I stared at my reflection, watching every detail carefully. The shape behind me didn't move. The smile didn't grow. It just stayed there, waiting, like it had already done its part. I swallowed slowly, my mind racing through the rules, trying to remember if there was anything about this, anything about the mirror, the room, anything I had missed. There wasn't, which meant one thing. This wasn't part of the rules. This was something else. And then it hit me. Not as a thought, but as a realization I couldn't ignore. It didn't matter what was behind me. It mattered what was controlling what I saw. And if I turned now, I might not be turning in the direction I thought I was. I forced myself to stay still, completely still. Not just my body, my thoughts, my breathing, everything. Because at this point, I wasn't trying to understand it anymore. I was trying not to trigger it. The mirror didn't change. The shape stayed behind me, that faint, unnatural smile still fixed on its face. But the room room felt different, quieter, not empty, waiting, like everything had paused just to see what I would do next. I focused on my breathing, slowing it down, keeping it steady, trying to match the rhythm I had heard before. And that's when I realized something. The breathing in front of me was gone completely. The presence I had felt, gone. But the reflection hadn't changed. It was still there, still close, still watching. My chest tightened, because that meant only one thing. Whatever had been in front of me wasn't there anymore. Slowly, carefully, I became aware of something I hadn't noticed before. The space behind me felt different, not empty, not quiet, occupied. And in that moment, the realization settled in. It hadn't disappeared. It had moved. And this time, it wasn't showing me where it was. The knock came from inside the room, soft, 3 times, evenly spaced. My entire body tensed instantly, because the door was still in front of me, locked, chained, untouched, and yet the sound came from behind, not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate. The same rhythm as before. I didn't turn. I didn't move. But my mind was already racing. It had followed the rules before. The hallway, the door, the voice. Now it was repeating the pattern. Inside. Another knock. Closer this time. Not on the wall, not on the door. On something behind me. Something I couldn't see. My breathing became shallow again as I stared at the mirror, watching the reflection carefully. The shape behind me had changed. It wasn't standing still anymore. Its arm was raised, slowly, carefully. And then another knock. But this time, I saw it in the reflection, not on a surface, not on the wall. It was knocking on the back of my head. And in that moment, something became painfully clear. The rules didn't keep it out. They showed it how to get closer. The knocking continued, slow, precise. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps again. Each time in the exact same rhythm. Not random, not frantic, measured. Like it was following something I was supposed to recognize. I didn't move, but my mind was already trying to connect it. The door, the hallway, before. 3 knocks. The same pattern, the same spacing. My chest tightened as I stared at the mirror, watching the reflection of the shape behind me. Its arm moved again, slowly, carefully, raising, lowering, matching the sound perfectly. Knock, 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 knock. I swallowed hard, because it wasn't just repeating the pattern, it was recreating it. Inside the room, closer than before. The rules had said not to open the door, not to respond. But there was no rule for this. No instruction for what to do when the pattern changed, when it wasn't outside anymore, when it was part of the space around you. And then the knocking stopped. Mid-pattern, not completed, cut off, like it didn't need to finish, like it had already confirmed something. And in that moment, the realization hit, cold and immediate. It wasn't trying to get in anymore. It was checking if I understood the pattern. I understood the pattern. That was the problem. The moment it stopped mid-knock, something in my mind tried to finish it automatically. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. It felt incomplete, wrong, like something left unfinished. And that feeling, it pulled at me. I didn't want to respond. I shouldn't. But the silence after the broken pattern felt heavier than anything before, like it was waiting for something. For me. My fingers twitched slightly against the bed, just once, just enough to tap. I froze instantly, because the moment I moved, the shape in the mirror reacted. Not fully, just a slight shift. Closer. My chest tightened, because it hadn't forced me to respond. It had waited for me to complete the pattern. Slowly, I pulled my hand back, pressing it firmly into the mattress, forcing myself to stay still again. But it was too late. The silence had changed. It wasn't waiting anymore. It had its answer. And then, softly, from behind me, one final knock, single, precise, like a confirmation. And in that moment, I understood something that made everything worse. I didn't need to open the door. I didn't need to speak. All it needed was for me to respond. After that last knock, the space between us disappeared. Not physically, but the feeling changed instantly. There was no more waiting, no more testing, no more patterns. The presence behind me became immediate, overlapping, like it wasn't next to me anymore, like it had moved into the same space I was in. My breath caught as the air around me shifted, heavier than before, pressing in from all sides. I couldn't tell where it was anymore. Behind me, beside me, inside the room, inside the space I occupied, everywhere. I stared at the mirror, trying to find it, trying to locate the shape, the reflection, anything that made sense. But the mirror didn't help anymore. It showed me alone, completely alone. My chest tightened, because that meant only one thing. It wasn't behind me anymore. It wasn't in front of me. It wasn't in the reflection. Slowly, I became aware of something I couldn't ignore. The breathing I heard before was now matching mine, perfectly. Not faster, not slower. Exactly the same. And in that moment, something settled in, cold and final. It wasn't near me anymore. It was synchronized with me. I tried to change my breathing, just slightly, just enough to break the rhythm, to prove that it wasn't real, that it wasn't connected to me. I inhaled slowly, held it, exhaled faster than before. For a second, there was silence. Then it matched perfectly. Again. No delay, no adjustment, like it had already known what I was going to do. My chest tightened as I tried again. Shorter breaths, uneven, forcing my body into a pattern that didn't feel natural. It followed. Every time. Exact. Precise. Not reacting. Not copying. Predicting. That's when panic started to rise. Not because it was close, but because I couldn't separate from it anymore. There was no distance left to create, no space to move away. I wasn't just in the same room as it. I wasn't just near it. I was part of whatever it was doing. And the worst part was that I didn't know which part was mine anymore. My breathing slowed again, not by choice, but because something in me gave up trying to fight it. And in that moment, the realization hit. Quiet. Final. It wasn't syncing with me. It was taking control of the rhythm entirely. And then it stopped. Not slowly. Not fading. Instantly. The breathing disappeared. Completely. My chest rose and fell on its own again. Uneven. Uncontrolled. Like my body had suddenly been given something back, that it didn't know how to use anymore. I stayed frozen, waiting for it to start again. It didn't. The room fell into a silence deeper than anything before. Not the quiet from earlier. This felt empty, wrong, like something had just left. Or worse, like it didn't need to stay anymore. I looked at the mirror. Nothing. Just me. Alone. No shape. No distortion. No presence. My chest tightened, because that didn't feel like relief. It felt like a reset, like something had finished what it needed to do. And then, from the hallway, a sound. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Moving past my door, exactly like the first night. My breath caught as I stared toward the entrance, because I understood something instantly. It wasn't in the room anymore. It had gone back outside. And this time, it knew exactly how I would react. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. Again, exactly like before. My body tensed instantly, every muscle tightening as I stared at the handle, waiting for what I already knew was coming. 3 knocks, soft, even, perfectly spaced. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Because this time, I knew the pattern. I knew what it wanted. The silence stretched for a moment. Then the voice came, calm, controlled, right on the other side. Daniel. No hesitation. No pause. It said my name immediately, like it didn't need to wait anymore, like it already knew I would listen. My chest tightened as I kept my eyes fixed on the door, refusing to react. It had changed. Before, it waited. Before, it tested. Now, it was direct, confident. Open the door, it said quietly, not asking, telling. And for a second, just a second, I felt the urge again, stronger than before, because it wasn't just the voice anymore. It was the pattern, the rhythm. Everything I had already responded to, pulling me toward it. And in that moment, I realized the worst part. This time, it wasn't trying to trick me. It was using what I had already learned. I didn't move. Not this time. Not when it said my name. Not when it told me to open the door. Because now I understood something I hadn't before. The rules weren't there to protect me from it. They were there to slow it down. Every rule I followed, every hesitation, every moment I chose not to react, it had watched, learned, adapted, and now it didn't need the rules anymore. The silence stretched between us. Then the handle moved again, slowly, deliberately. This time, I didn't reach for it. I didn't step closer. I just watched. In the moment I chose not to respond, the knocking stopped. The voice disappeared. The presence outside faded, gone, just like that. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. Morning came again. Everything looked normal. But something inside me had changed, because I finally understood the truth. It wasn't trying to get into the room. It was trying to get into me. And the moment I stopped responding, it lost its way in. But I don't think it left. I think it's still there, waiting for the next person who doesn't understand the rules.